Hey, what's up there, YouTubers? It's me again, Brian, aka Gamer 55551, and I am back with a My 2 Cent video for this week, for the week of March 1st to March 6th, though. And I'm back from, after taking time off last week, though. Went out, living out here in Southern California, went out to the desert, spent some quality time with some family and all that stuff. Relax for a little bit. I mean, let's face it, we all need to take a break every once in a while and all that stuff. Went to a local casino out there, though, mostly slot casino, and actually won like $90.08, so not bad. But after spending just maybe like $20 or something like that, so won something. But either way, I'm back from coming out of from the desert, and back here doing my 2 Cent video and all that. And we have 4 stories to cover, including rumors about the more of the Switch Pro rumor, which does seem to sound a bit more believable this time. E3, going into what E3 will be like at 2021 and all. Square Enix possibly bringing more remakes of some of their older titles and all. And of course, the story that broke last week that I want to talk about this week is that, of course, has to do with Anthem Next, and I think we all know about the future of Anthem and all that. But before we get started, we'll do what I like to do, the quick My 2 Cent part. Stories that kind of caught my attention, but I'm not really going into a huge amount of details and all that stuff. We'll start with the first one, that apparently there's going to be a new title coming out for the Nintendo eShop called Doug Hates His Job, and it lands on the Nintendo Switch. The title seems to be a mixed match of different genres and all that stuff. The title seems weird and everything like that, but it's a game I might consider taking a look at, though. We also learned that Bandai Namco might be doing a Nintendo, or a style similar to what Nintendo's doing with their Nintendo Directs, which is basically based on supposedly a rumor going around, though. It wouldn't surprise me if they do this, though, considering how well the Nintendo Directs have been, though, and, Sony's State of Play. Some are good, some are bad, and all that, so it wouldn't surprise me if Bandai Namco did this. A game that was stealth drop, which was Robotech the Macross Saga. This was a game released back on the Game Boy Advance back in 2002, along with Robotech Battle Cry, so it's sort of odd that this one dropped onto supposedly the Nintendo eShop. And although I'm also surprised they didn't try to consider bringing Robotech Battle Cry over. That's kind of interesting and all that, but it's right now, I think it's available in different regions. No word at this time about it coming to the US, but I wouldn't be surprised if it does and all. We learned that Epic Game has acquired a studio that has created Fall Guy, the popular multiplayer or battle royale game that was released on the PS4, which as of right now is still confirmed to be coming to the Nintendo Switch and the Xbox as well. We also learned some interesting announcement from NIS America, which has basically learned that they are porting over some of their classic games like Phantom Brave and Soul Nomad, The World's Eater, which will be coming to the Nintendo Switch sometime during the summer of 2021. We also have supposedly a release date for Disgaea 6. I believe it was June 6th or anything like that. I'll have to double check but that's coming as well. So it's certainly nice to see NIS America's putting more support for the Nintendo Switch, even if it's some of their older titles, although I would like to see all the Disgaea games come to the Nintendo Switch. That would be really great if they could do that and all that stuff. We also learned that Blaster Master 03 has been announced by Indie Creates, and it will be getting be released in July. I believe we're coming to Switch, Steam, and PS4, and there's supposedly reports coming out that supposedly there's a Blaster Master collection, I believe, for the Switch that will contain Blaster Master 0, 1, 2, and 3. No word at this time on a Western release, though, but I wouldn't be surprised if I see it pop up maybe on Play Asia, or if Limited Runs Games does something with it, though. After all, we've seen them done some of this stuff before, so but either way, glad that we're getting a third Blaster Master 0 and all that stuff. And last but not least, though, we are learning that Limited Run Games is going to start opening up next week for pre-orders for the physical version of No More Heroes 1 and 2. The classic Wii titles will be getting a physical version for the Nintendo Switch and all that stuff. These two were really good games when they came out and all that. I'm a big fan of Suda. I'm a fan, or I won't say big fan, but a fan of Suda51. I do enjoy the No More Heroes game, so it certainly is going to be really interesting to see how well these pre-orders go. I do believe they're doing one where it will be, I think it's like $140, and it will have both the collection edition of both No More Heroes 1 and 2. So, but if you're interested in getting a physical version of these games, be prepared to spend money next week and all. Okay, with the quick my 2 cent part now done, we'll get started with our first story though. And also I do want to point out all the stories I talk about. Links will be in the description if you want to check them out or anything like that. But anyway, we'll get started with our first story, and this one has to do with Anthem, particularly Anthem Next. Anthem really has had a hard time trying to get its footing ever since it originally came out. The game was launched to pretty much not great reviews and all that stuff, but what really gave it the attention, but for all the wrong reason, was when former Kotaku writer, now working for Bloomberg, Jason Strider, put out a report about the whole debacle of a mess of that Anthem went through, including the infamous BioWare magic and all that stuff, and the issue of crunch, which is still sort of a problem the video game industry still needs to address and all that stuff. The last time we've heard about Anthem and all was that basically a small team of 30 were going to rip the game apart and try to see if they could salvage and work on it though. And then we learned before that EA would decide its fate and decide what to do with basically Anthem going forward. Well, last week though, EA made a decision and they decided to basically decide to not do anything with Anthem Next and all, and decided that this will not be released and that they'll leave Anthem as it is right now though. In an article from, let me see if I can get it. Okay, in an article from Game Radar, it reads that Anthem Next has been canceled, BioWare announced. It reads that, quote, BioWare has announced that it's prematurely halting development on Anthem Next, which would have been a bottom-up transformation roughly on par with No Man's Sky Next and Destiny the Taken King. You can also put in Final Fantasy XIV as well. Anthem servers will continue to run as usual, BioWare has confirmed. Excuse me. It's likely a variety of factors that contribute to BioWare's decision to end development on Anthem, but the COVID pandemic in particular and the pressure working from home was mentioned in Wednesday's announcements, which I would like to say on a side note though, I don't disagree that COVID-19 certainly may have played a part in this, but from what I've been hearing, and I kind of agree with some folks who have said this though, to use COVID-19 as your excuse for why you're canceling Anthem Next as your only reason, I think that's ridiculous, considering that Anthem had troubles way before basically COVID-19 entered the picture and all that stuff. Anyway, moving on, it reads that, quote, 2020 was a year unlike any others, however, and while we continue to make progress against our game projects at BioWare, working from home during the pandemic has had an impact on our productivity, and not everything we had planned as a studio before COVID-19 can be accomplished without putting under stress on our team, wrote Anthem executive producer Christian Daly. In recent weeks, EA has been gripping with decisions on how to halt Anthem's future. Early last year, the studio committed to a complete overhaul of Anthem, meant to provide a more satisfying loot experience, better long-term progressions, and a more fulfilling endgame. But a recent Bloomberg report described a situation where EA wasn't sure to fund Anthem, though. In today's announcement, Daly said the decision to cancel Anthem was not easy, but explained that the studio needed all of its resources to focus on its upcoming games. Moving forward, we need to laser focus our effort as a studio and strengthen the next Dragon Age and Mass Effect title while continuing to provide quality update to Star Wars The Old Republic, Daly said. Honestly, I kind of have to say that I'm not really surprised by this at all. And in fact, I don't think anybody should be surprised. This game had problems long before even COVID-19 even entered the picture and all that, though. I mean, it has earned not exactly a great reputation and all that. So to hear them pulling the plug on Anthem Next isn't really that shocking and all that stuff. And the fact that they're keeping the servers up for now, I mean, that's interesting they're doing that, but I wouldn't be surprised if they ultimately pull the plug on it one day. I mean, look what happened with Battleborn. They pulled the plug on that one. You can't even play the single player mode on that anymore, though. And many are looking at Marvel's Avengers, the one from Square Enix and Crystal Dynamics, and many are wondering how long until they pull the plug on that one. Although for now, it looks like they're still aiming to bring it to the PS5 and Xbox Series S and X, but I wonder if that's going to be enough to save that game as well. If there is kind of one bright spot out of this, them pulling out Anthem Next, it's the fact that it may have had an impact on the upcoming Dragon Age game or at least I like to see it, in a more positive light. From an article posted from Kotaku, excuse me, it reads, quote, according to a report from Bloomberg, EA is allowing BioWare to ditch all multiplayer components originally planned for the latest game in the Dragon Age series. EA is a company known for its dodgy insistence on adding multiplayer and microtransactions to every one of its games, pushing its products towards the often controversial games as a service model whenever possible. But the massive publisher is backtracking on its famous unpopular stance due to the success of single-player-only Jedi Fallen Order, along with the devastation failure of its high-budget, recently mercy-killed service game Anthem. 2015's Dragon Age Inquisition did feature a boring co-op multiplayer mode that seemed completely Antithical, apologize for not saying the name correctly, to its game's origins, hence as a single-player story-focused experience. In 2012, some fans complained about multiplayer being added to Mass Effect 3 because it made playing with others the only way to increase your galactic readiness stats, an important factor in achieving the game's best ending. According to the source at BioWare, the latest Dragon Age game has previously been designed with a heavy multiplayer component, but it has since turned into a single-player only game, though. Now, that's kind of interesting that that's being mentioned, because at first it was reported that Dragon Age 4 was going to be single-player. Then they decided to move that to basically the multiplayer part, which many called it Anthem with Dragons. But what's interesting about this whole situation is that the single-player Jedi Fallen Order game did better than this big budget AAA games as a service microtransaction Anthem did, though. Let that sink in for a minute. The fact that that did better than the game that EA wanted to, with recurring user spending and all that. That is pretty amazing, and I'm glad that certainly the cancellation of Anthem Next, as well, that might be disappointing to some people, but the cancellation of that had an impact in a positive way, at least that's how I see it, of now putting Dragon Age back as a single-player experience, which is definitely a good thing. I'm still a little iffy because this is EA we're talking about, and I'm worried that even though they're going back to a single-player experience, that they might find some kind of way to squeeze in microtransactions in some form or some capacity. On the other hand, Jedi Fallen Order didn't have anything like that whatsoever. So I'll take a wait-and-see approach on this one in terms of Dragon Age 4. But overall, while it does sound unfortunate that Anthem Next is not going to happen, honestly, though, I think the writing was on the wall for a very long time for Anthem and Anthem Next. And while I don't deny the pandemic, the COVID-19 certainly played a contributing factor to Anthem Next not happening, though, I don't think that was the only factor. I think there were plenty of other factors well before COVID-19 even entered the picture, though. And the fact that now we're seeing Dragon Age 4 move towards more of a single-player experience following what happened to Anthem Next. Personally, I think that is a very, very good thing indeed. Okay, we're going to take a quick break, and when we get back, we'll get to part 2. And this one has to do with Square Enix and them teaming up with Polish developer Forever Entertainment on some of their IP. So we'll take a quick break, and we will be right back. Okay, and we are back with part 2 of our My 2 Cent video, and for this one, we're going to be taking a look at Square Enix and an interesting article in terms of them teaming up with another development studio, though. Now, when people think of Square Enix, one of the names that have popped up, one of the most obvious names that will pop up is, of course, the Final Fantasy series, the classic RPG series that has been going around for a long time, though. But they've also done other games out there, such as, the Dragon Quest series, though. We've seen series like the Nier, with Nier Automata doing very well, and possibly a port of the first, I think, Nier Replica. But there's also a treasure trove of a lot of their other games, like the Mana series that saw a release on the Switch, PS4, and PC. We've also seen the Romancing Saga, if I'm saying if I'm saying the name correctly, Star Ocean, Brave Man Visaki. I apologize if I'm not saying the name correctly, though. The Chrono Trigger series and all that stuff. So there's certainly a lot of... Oh, and Parasite Eve as well. Certainly a lot of back catalog of games and all that stuff. Well, recently, it seems as though that it looks like Square Enix might be digging through their treasure trove of titles and might be giving it kind of a facelift to it, at least one of the series, though, based on... by basically working with the studio in Poland called Forever Entertainment. In an article posted on GameSpot, it reads that, quote, developer Forever Entertainment has signed a deal with Square Enix to create several remakes under one game brand, as reported by Benzi, B-I-Z-N-E-S, based in the Polish city of Krakow. I think I remember visiting that area when I went on a tour bus and all that stuff. But anyway, Forever Entertainment will retain the core gameplay and scenario element of the game property being worked on, but the project will feature a new graphic design. The list of Square Enix games in the library can be narrowed down to several dozen options, ranging from Parasite Eve to the Saga series. It's safe to say that it's probably not another stab at Final Fantasy VII, as the latest mobile remake is being handled by APPLIBOT. Forever Entertainment does have experience remaking Square Enix games, as the developer is worked on the Panzer Dragoon remaster for the Nintendo Switch. I believe Destructoid pointed out that they're working on the sequel as well, which will come out in late 2021, and that they are also remaking the 1996 arcade shooter House of the Dead and House of the Dead 2, which, as a side note, I'm happy about that, but I wouldn't mind seeing a remake of the Virtual Cop series or Confidential Mission. That would be great if that ever happens. Anyway, moving on, though, it says, the agreement will see Forever Entertainment earn over 50% of the game's revenue generated across all platforms for the remake, but the studio will have to front the development costs for these projects out of its own pocket. Though Square Enix, with remakes of games from its back catalog, has fairly been hit or miss over the years. Games as Chrono Trigger on PC were criticized for being nothing more than a port of the mobile version of the game, with the product being vastly improved with a series of patches over time. So there are many ways that this could go, and there are some people who have sort of guessed what they might be. Some of them are pointing to it's possibly Final Fantasy 13, which is kind of loved and hated by some folks out there as possibility of that one being the game, though, considering that there are different entries in the Final Fantasy 13 series, though. Others could point to games like Chrono Trigger and all that stuff. Personally, and this is just my personal opinion, I could think of two games that I would love to see Forever Entertainment work on if this is true. One would be, I believe I mentioned this earlier, Brave Man Visaki, if I'm saying the name correctly, and I think Visaki Samurai Legend that was released on the PS2. I wouldn't mind seeing those two games being worked on, to even the Parasite Eve series. I would love to see a full overhaul, if Forever Entertainment works on one, of both 1 and 2 that were originally released back during the PlayStation era, though. And I would definitely be open to seeing this come to the Nintendo Switch if that does happen, though. So we'll have to wait and see. Maybe we'll hear something this year and all that stuff. Maybe we'll hear something at E3, which will be in some form, in some capacity, which I'll get to part 3 on that in just a minute. So it's anyone's guess what this game may be, though. I wouldn't be surprised if it's another entry in the Final Fantasy series or anything like that, like Final Fantasy 13 or any other of the Final Fantasy games. But like I said, Parasite Eve, I would love to see if that happens. Star Ocean, that would be great. Or even Brave Man Visaki, would like to see if that happens. So overall, though, it's going to be very interesting to see what Forever Entertainment works on and what kind of game that they are working on with Square Enix under this one brand or one series, to be exact. So it's going to be really interesting. And right now, it's pretty much anyone's guess at this moment. Okay, we're going to take a quick break. When we get back, we'll get to part 3. And this one has to do with E3 this year, which seems to be that it's somewhat canceled, but not entirely, though. So we'll take a quick break, and we will be right back. Okay, and we are back with part 3 of our My 2 Cent video, and for this one, we're going to be taking a look at E3, and which it sounds like it's canceled on one part, but not canceled on the other part, possibly, though. E3 obviously has been, the famous video game showcase and all that stuff. It happens like almost every year around the time of June and all that stuff. But E3 has also been hit with a lot of people wondering if it's still relevant today and all that stuff in the age of the internet and all that stuff, and other companies hosting their own events and all that stuff. And of course, last year we had the whole situation with COVID-19, and because of that, COVID-19 really put a hamper on a lot of these trade shows and all that stuff, prompting E3 to be canceled, to even the famous San Diego Comic-Con last year being canceled as well, though. And while we are certainly right now seems to be somewhat in a better spot than we were last year with COVID and all that stuff, it's still raging. It still has to be addressed and all that though. That hasn't changed the fact that some of these events aren't happening like in the close proximities as they were like years ago. And it sounds as though that E3 might be, if it's E3 is going on this year, if that's true, it sounds like it may be taking a different approach than it has been in the past. From an article posted on Destructoid, it reads that a report from VGC about a document listing the gathering canceled though. According to the article on Destructoid, it reads, "It will hardly come to surprise to anyone at this point, but it appears that for the second year running, the 2021 Electronic Entertainment Expo (E3) has officially canceled due to the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic. While the event failed to take place last year, one of many industry events focused off-calendar by coronavirus impact, the organizers remain optimistic that the show will be returning to the LA Convention Center for its 2021 edition of the annual gathering of developer, publishers, and fans. But as reported by VGC, Video Game Chronicles, recent documents from the Board of Los Angeles Convention and Tourism Development Commission clearly list E3 2021 as a canceled event. There has been some rumbling this year that E3 wished to transition the show to an online affair, presenting a long weekend of near non-stop live stream interviews, reveals, and other online presentations. For this, it would require the backing of an army of major industry publishers from around the globe, many of whom may simply choose to host their own live stream event as to when they respectively deemed appropriate, similar to the seamlessly endless gluts of stream that ran throughout the summer and into the fall of 2020. Undoubtedly, E3 organizers, the Entertainment Software Association, ESA, has confirmed to VGC that it plans to go ahead to host a substitute digital event, We can confirm that we are transforming the E3 experience for 2021 and will soon share exact details on how we're bringing the global video game community together, said an ESA spokesman to VGC. We are having great conversations with publishers, developers, and companies across the board, and we look forward to sharing details about their involvement soon. E3 2021 is not the first and most certainly will not be the last annual event to be canceled for the second year running. The Game Developer Conference, GDC, has already announced its intention to host an online event this July, while many of the year's biggest video game-based gatherings such as fighting game tournament EVO, European Festival Gamescom, and various edition of PAX all remain equally tentative, with solidifying their respective plans for 2021. So, assuming this is all accurate and all that stuff, I honestly have to say it's not really that surprising, though. Though it is somewhat disappointed if it turns out to be that we're not going to see the live event of E3 this year at the LA Convention Center. I am not surprised by this, though. As of right now, although I think we're in a better spot than we were last year with COVID-19, COVID-19 is still going on, nevertheless, and all that stuff. And with a lot of the policies of social distancing and so forth, obviously they're going to have to rethink some of their structure. Though I am curious to see once COVID-19 dies down and all that stuff, and we can get back to some form of gathering and all that, will E3 still be relevant? Will it still be able to do its gathering, or will it just go the all digital going forward? So I'm very curious to see how this is all going to play out. But in the meantime, it is going to be interesting to see how E3 is going to be this year going through the all digital event. And it'll be also interesting to see if other developers or publishers decide to get on board. Some might, but some may figure they're more comfortable just doing their own digital event and all that stuff, not taking part at E3. Like we saw last year, Nintendo was planning a digital event, but decided to tell developers, go ahead, announce their games and so forth. So we'll have to wait and see how this all plays out and all. But overall, assuming all this is correct, though, it is a little disappointing that there won't be a live E3 this year and all that stuff, but I'm not really shocked by this, especially considering the whole COVID-19 situations and so forth. So this isn't really that surprising if the ESA decides to take this approach with E3 this year. Going forward, though, once the whole situation with COVID has died down, I'm very curious to see what direction they take E3 next. Takes E3 though. Will they take it, like I said, will they bring back the live gathering and all that stuff, or will they basically just do all digital going forward? That, of course, remains to be seen. Okay, we're going to take a quick break, and when we get back, we'll get to part 4, and this one has to do with a Switch Pro rumor, or Switch.to, or a revised version of the Nintendo Switch that sounds like we could possibly be seeing it sometime this year. So we'll take a quick break, and we will be right back. Okay, and we are back with our 4th and final part of our My 2 Cent video, and this one we're going to be talking about the Nintendo Switch, particularly the Switch rumors about something either referred to as Switch Pro or Switch.to or Switch Revision and all that stuff. So as some of you probably are aware, this week, this is the 4th anniversary of the Nintendo Switch that has come out. 4 years since the original Nintendo Switch, and boy, has it really has taken a lot of people, have taken the world by storm and all that stuff, and has been very successful for the Nintendo, coming off the unfortunate failure of the Wii U and all that stuff. At first, when people heard about it, the whole idea of a console handheld hybrid and all that stuff, some people thought this was going to fail and all that stuff, but apparently it did very well, thanks to Nintendo actually marketing the system, doing a better job with communications on what it is and all that, and that really has made the system a huge success. followed by having some pretty good, some good launch titles though, particularly having Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild as your launch title. That definitely helped, along with bringing games, like Super Mario Odyssey and all that. So, but the system has done very well, not to mention surprises such as seeing games like Doom Eternal, Wolfenstein 2 The New Colossus, and The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt make its way onto the Nintendo Switch. It amazes me how how developers, even if they are port houses though, manage to get those games running properly on a system like the Nintendo Switch and all that stuff. But despite the Switch's success and so forth, there's always been that rumor going around about Nintendo possibly doing a revision or a Switch Pro or a Switch.to, though, or Pro like the PS4 Pro and so forth and all that stuff. And every time that rumor has kind of been shot down, outside of the one when it was reported that Nintendo would be releasing something called a Switch Lite, a Switch that is, you don't dock with your TV, it's just a handheld only device and all that stuff, and which later turned out to be true and all that. But lately we have heard rumors about, Nintendo possibly doing a Switch Pro or a Switch.to. Some of that range from with their partnership with NVIDIA, though, which supposedly lasts up to 2 decades. It's where we've learned about, the Tegra X1 Plus being used in the newer version of the NVIDIA Shield, to reports about NVIDIA hiring people to put this DLSS technology into some of their Tegra lines and all that, and that has given the impression that we could see something used for, the Nintendo Switch, since that uses the Tegra X1 chip and all that stuff. Well, right now, a new report has started to come out, particularly from Bloomberg Industries, or report from Bloomberg to be exact, that we could see this, either the Switch.to or Switch Pro or whatever it might be called. It's possible we could see it being released during the holidays. In a report basically from Bloomberg, as I mentioned, it reads from, I think, Takahashi, the same Takahashi though, apologize if I'm not saying the name correctly to be exact. It reads that, quote, Nintendo plans to reveal a model of its Switch gaming console equipped with a bigger Samsung OLED display this year, hoping the larger touchscreen can prop up demands in time for the holidays, people familiar with the plan said. Samsung Display will start mass production of 7-inch 720p resolution OLED panels as early as June, with an potential monthly target of just under 1 million units, said the people who asked them not to be identified, discussing internal matters. The displays are slated for shipment to assemblers around July, people said. Representatives from Nintendo and Samsung Display declined to comment. Nintendo seeks to sustain a Switch lineup that continues to sell well against the Xbox and PlayStation, thanks to the pandemic-era breakout hits like Animal Crossing and a chip crunch that has plagued suppliers of rival devices. But the gadget is now in its 5th year, while Microsoft and Sony both have new and more powerful machines in the market, although it's really hard to find an Xbox Series S and X or PS5 at this moment, though. Believe me, I've had hard times trying to find one, though. Anyway, the gaming community has speculated online about the introduction of an OLED, or Organic Light Emulated DIODE screen, but Nintendo has stayed mum, and the president, Furukawa, apologize if I'm not saying his name correctly, said in February that his company had no plans to announce a new Switch anytime soon. Samsung involvement is the strongest indication that Nintendo is serious about updating the console, and on a larger scale, though. Shares of Kyoto-based company maker fell 3.6 in Tokyo on Thursday amidst a wider market sell-off. Meanwhile, as far as what this OLED battery is, some of the people are pointing out that that the OLED panel will consume less battery, offer high contrast, and possibly faster response time when compared to the Switch current liquid crystal display and all that stuff. Some people have complained, assuming around this rumor, that they're disappointed it's not 1080p and all that stuff, but I can understand the argument for why keeping it 720p, mostly, for battery life and so forth, though. Anyway, meanwhile, over at Screen Rant, it is reported that it's been reported that basically the so-called development kits, whether it's Switch Pro or anything like that, it's supposedly already in developers' hands, though. According to the article from Screen Rant, it reads, following new reports that on the long speculation Nintendo Switch Pro, which may be feature a 7-inch Samsung OLED screen, more rumors are suggesting developers already have the console in their hands. The Nintendo Switch is already a pretty beloved console thanks to its large library and portability, but it could get even better if the new info is true. Rumors of a Nintendo Switch Pro has been circulated for quite some time now, but reports of its power has always varied. Some say it'll be some beastly machine that will open the doors to all new games. Others suggest it increased the resolution of games to 4K when in docked, which is still pretty impressive. Whether or not that can lead to games that are currently a bit out of reach for the console handheld hybrid remains to be seen, however. Imran Khan, IMRAN-KHAN, reported on Twitter that developers have access to the rumored Nintendo Switch Pro. His tweet just came shortly after a report of the new Samsung screen being implemented in the console and that it will begin manufacturing in June. Con sources noted that enough developers have developed kits for the console that leaks should begin trickling out very soon. He basically made a tweet saying, quote, "It's funny, I was talking to some people today who were like, there's enough people with dev kits that leaks should be happening any day now. Guess it didn't even take that long." Anyway, moving on, it reads, that's quote, "Nintendo stated in early 2021 that a new Nintendo Switch isn't coming soon, but it's not clear what soon really means in that context, which could range from April to the end of the year, although, like I said, there's been reports it could be for the holidays and all that, or beyond. It's unclear, but it's likely that if Nintendo is really ramping up production soon, it's probably going to announce in the next few months. In traditional Nintendo fashion, the company tries to have relatively small gaps between announcement hardware and revisions. For reference, the Nintendo Switch Lite was announced in July 2019 and released on September 2019. Previously reported have contested Nintendo's not coming soon claim suggests it will debut this year. Given Nintendo hasn't talked too much about the lineup of the second half of 2021, it's entirely possible another direct will happen in the spring or summer that both debut the first look at Nintendo Switch Pro, excuse me, but also a bunch of new games in the second half of this year that may supremely benefit from an enhanced controller. As of right now, fans can only speculate on how powerful the console will actually be, and it will be a real game changer. But something does seem to be coming sooner rather than later. So we've heard a lot about, the whole Switch revision and all that in the past. I would say that I do think that there may be some truth to this one, though. Again, it's a rumor. We don't know 100% if this is true or not. But excuse me. Sorry, I just had a brave fart right there. But with, the PS5 and the Xbox Series S and X already out right now, though, I do think it may be time for Nintendo to sort of upgrade the Nintendo Switch. I can understand when the Switch came out. I can understand that it was way too early to be talking about a Switch Pro or Switch.to and all that stuff. But now, given where things are at the moment, though, this might be the right time for them to consider the idea of doing, a revision Switch and all that stuff. I still think if another Switch is going to happen, if Nintendo's going to do a new Switch or anything like that, my guess is that I could see it more kind of similar to what we saw when we went from the old 3DS to the new 3DS, though. So I could see something similar to that if another Nintendo Switch does happen. I do think one of the risks Nintendo does make if they do announce, if this new Nintendo Switch is going to happen, is the risk that they may end up splitting the fan base or anything like that. And that's the last thing Nintendo wants to do. So I think they have to be really, really careful how they approach this and all that stuff. The last thing they want to do is do something that destroys the momentum that the Nintendo Switch has had for the last 4 years, and that's the last thing Nintendo needs to do. So I think they need to be really, really careful with that, though. Like anything, it could go either way. It's possible it could be a game changer, or it's possible it could be just a mid-gen refreshment, though. And it's possible we could see maybe like that Tegra X1 Plus possibly being in this new Switch. We could possibly see something like this DLSS technology be implemented into the into this new Switch and all. So there's a lot of possibilities of which direction this could go, though. For now, if this rumor is true, though, I'm pretty much going to keep my expectations in check, wait until we hear an official confirmation and all that stuff. So I still think if all this is true, I expect it to be more like going from the old 3DS to the new 3DS. So I don't think we're going to see a big leap, but like anything, I could be wrong on this one. So overall, though, again, it is a rumor, though. We've heard the Switch Pros and Switch.to with new Nintendo Switch rumors for a while, though. So there's a chance this could be false. But given that we're coming on the 4th year of the Nintendo Switch, and with the PS5 and the Xbox Series S and X out, it's possible this may be the time for Nintendo to bring out a brand new Nintendo Switch, possibly a revision. So this may be the time to do something like that, though. Okay, this concludes this My 2 Cent video for this week. And again, these are my opinion. What are yours? What are your thoughts about EA canceling Anthem Next? Do you think this was the right decision for EA to make, though? Or do you don't think this was the right decision at all? Do you think the writing was on the wall for a long time for Anthem and Anthem Next? Do you think COVID-19 do you think COVID-19 was a big factor in this? Do you think it played a part in this? Or do you think Anthem had problems long before COVID-19 even entered the picture? What are your thoughts about Square Enix teaming up with Forever Entertainment, working on a series of games around one brand, to be exact, though? Do you think it's possible it could be a brand around any of the Final Fantasy games, to be exact? Or do you think they might dig through some of Square Enix's treasure and all that stuff? Possibly a remake of Chrono Trigger or Chrono Cross, or maybe the Parasite Eve games, to be exact? What are your thoughts about E3 going all digital this year? Do you think this is the right decision for E3 and all that stuff? Do you think this is the approach they'll be going forward into the future? Or do you expect that once the situation with COVID-19 dies down, that we could see a return of the live event and so forth? And what are your thoughts about these rumors about the revision of the Nintendo Switch, or Switch.to, or Switch Pro? Do you think these rumors are true? Do you think they're not true at all? Do you think we're at a point right now where it's time for the Nintendo Switch to get a upgrade? Do you think this is the moment to do that? Or do you think Nintendo should continue with the current form that they have, the Nintendo Switch and the Switch Lite at this moment? Do you agree with what I said in this video? Do you disagree? Do you have a difference of opinion? As always, sound off in the comment section below. Let me know what you think. And if you do like this video, I hope you hit the like button. I would appreciate it. And I hope you do subscribe to my YouTube channel. If you do, make sure you hit the bell icon for notifications of any new videos I put up. Also, feel free to share this video if you want to, and feel free to donate to my channel if you like. You could do it through PayPal me or Patreon. Links will be in the description of this video. And I will see you again next time when I do another video. Hopefully that'll be soon. Until then, from Southern California, wish you all a good day then. Bye!